Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much, Deputy Attorney General. I want to talk to you a little bit about the Anti-Weaponization Fund. Just by way of background, you've had a long-standing relationship, of course, with President Trump, served as his personal criminal attorney, right?
I met him for the first time a couple years ago.
Right. And in the course of your representation of the president, you earned over $9 million, correct?
Well, my law firm was paid that much. I had 6 or 7 lawyers.
Well, that was in your financial disclosures. I don't have a problem.
Oh, no, I did. I was paid it. Sorry,
Right.
But I'm saying it went to my law firm. I had employees.
Right. It's been raised that you have a close relationship with the president, but you're entitled to that, and the president is entitled to appoint as Attorney General a person in whom he has some trust. So that's not an issue for me. But on the Anti-Weaponization Fund, there is the question of whether a president who is suing the taxpayers, the IRS, for $10 billion, and where his formerly personal lawyer is representing the taxpayers, is there a conflict of interest? And my understanding is that before you actually got here, you did get ethics training when you were, after you were acting Deputy Attorney General, correct?
Yes.
And my understanding is that you were advised that you should not be engaged in matters that affected President Trump in his individual capacity. Is that correct?
No, I'm not sure what your understanding is based upon, but no. There's very clear ethics rules that I was required to follow that I do follow.
It's based on a letter from Mr. Terrell, and you received normal ethics training.
Yes.
And normal ethics includes that you do not represent someone with whom you have been representing them before in a personal matter, right?
I'm not trying to get uber technical, but there are very technical rules around the ethics requirements, and I follow them.
All right. Well, maybe you could provide us with what the ethical materials
I can tell you
were
right
that
now
were
if you're
provided.
interested.
What I'd like you to do is send us the materials. Let me go on. If you had an issue, there was a dispute involving, say, Paramount, would you have a lawyer from the Justice Department who owned $9 million in stock negotiate on behalf of the government with that company?
It depends on as long as there's an ethical and no reason there was no conflict.
So if I had $9 million in stock with Paramount, I'm representing the people. There's an adversarial relationship. You'd let me negotiate on behalf of the people when the outcome of those negotiations would have an impact on my stock price?
Sorry, I just want to understand your hypo. If a lawyer for the Department of Justice has $9 million in Paramount stock, they should not be on that case.
Right.
I agree. Yes.
Okay. And, you know, what happened here with the president that's so mystifying to many of us, it would be analogous if the governor of Vermont sued the Department of Taxes for $10 billion. And we don't appoint attorney generals, but in New Hampshire they do, but let's say we did. And the governor is formerly personal attorney.
There's no comparison
Let me finish my question. The governor sues the Department of Taxes for $10 billion. His former personal attorney, who's now appointed attorney general, negotiates with the Department of Taxes and ends up settling by setting up a fund in the control, essentially, of the governor for $1.776 billion. That doesn't sound fishy to you?
Well, the hypo you just described, I don't think it's appropriate to use the word fishy. It's either ethical or not ethical,
Well,
and there's
you know what? Vermonters would just say it stinks. I mean, that is truly bizarre, that the chief executive gets his appointed person who was formerly his personal attorney to negotiate on his behalf, where at the end of the day, taxpayers are going to pay. So I'll just leave it at that.
The other thing I'll correct, though, is you use the word as if I negotiated. I wasn't part of the negotiation, which I've said before.
Your department is. You had to sign off on it.
That's true.
That is your signature.
Yes, that is my signature.
I mean, look, you're at the top of the pile here.
Yes.
So you don't get involved in all the phone calls and all the details. But at the end of the day, you have to do due diligence and satisfy yourself that you in good faith can sign off on the agreement.
Correct.
And you did.
Yes.
So that is your responsibility, and I'm sure you accept
Oh, I do
it.
have responsibility for it.
That's
I agree
right.
with that. Yes.
All right. And, you know, let's talk about the pardons. I understand the president, any president, has total authority to pardon anyone he or she wants. And that includes commuting sentences and it includes restoration of gun rights. You know who Liz Oyer is.
Yes.
And you know who Mel Gibson is.
Yes.
All right, Mel Gibson was convicted of domestic violence. What he did was he punched his then girlfriend in the teeth, threatened her with a gun, while she had their infant in her arms. Now, it's the president's decision. He can restore Mr. Gibson's gun rights. That's not your decision. But my understanding is you had a pardon attorney who, when requests were made to restore gun rights to domestic abusers, they'd be vetted. Mental health issues, other issues, and that's because 500% increase in homicide rates of domestic abusers who have guns. You asked, or one of your people asked, Liz Oyer, to provide a letter that basically said, okay, we can restore his gun rights. Is that correct?
That happened the day I was starting. I know Ms. Oyer has claimed that
it was 2 days after.
I know that Ms. Oyer has claimed that had anything to do with her firing. I didn't even know of that. I had known nothing about Mel Gibson or that letter when I fired her. Nothing.
So why did you fire her?
For a number of reasons. For one,
you were there 2 days?
Yes, for a number of reasons. It had nothing to do with Mel Gibson. The decisions that she had made as pardon attorney in the weeks and months leading up to the end of President Biden's term were completely inconsistent with President Trump's authority, including recommending commuting every single individual on death row, which even President Biden didn't do.
Right. I'll let the Americans be the jury of whether that sounds right. But 2 days after you were there, she got fired. She was told to do a letter that was basically going to validate the decision the president had made to restore gun rights to a man who smashed his girlfriend's mouth, threatened her with a gun, and did it with her holding their infant.
And had nothing to do with why she was fired, by the way. Nothing.
Now, what also is documented is that she was going to testify here in Congress before a roundtable. And people were dispatched, federal marshals, to go to her home at night. It turns out she was not there. Her 11-year-old son was there alone. And fortunately, at the very last minute, that access to her house or the trip to her house was canceled.
That's not true. I mean, if you want me to answer with the truth, I can.
What part of it is not true?
When we learned that she was going to testify about privileged communications, like we do anytime a former employee is going to violate their ethical duties, we drafted a letter. We tried to serve that letter on her via email. We tried to contact her. She would not answer her phone. Okay. So the way the Department of Justice serves people in every case is with Deputy United States Marshals. Right. We endeavored to do that, and then she accepted service.
Thank you. I'll go on. Kash Patel, I do want to go back to my colleague, Senator Weiss, has some concern. I have concerns about him because of the reports about his drinking, about the incredibly bad morale there. But I'm not going to ask you on that. You are a supervisor, so obviously you have some responsibility to be reviewing this behavior.
I don't think he has any issues drinking. He has no issues with morale.
All right, but here's what is very clear. He was at the White House for 8 hours, and this is after a report came out in the New York Times that talked about the $400 million Qatari plane that was Air Force One not having certain deceptive defensive capabilities, and issued subpoenas to reporters demanding that they turn over their news sources. I happen to believe it's extremely important to protect the right of the press to have confidential sources in order to get out information that is absolutely in the public interest. Do you support Mr. Patel's efforts to subpoena and get reporters under the grill to disclose who their confidential sources are?
The Department of Justice requires that I authorize it, which I did. And those reporters, we're not targeting reporters. They're material witnesses, just like a reporter would be a material witness to a car crash.
Yeah,
they
but
are witnesses. And so
in the question you want to ask them is who were their sources. That goes to the heart of the First Amendment.
No, the question we want to ask them is who provided them with classified national security information, which everybody in this body should want to protect. I would hope.
Senator Hawley.
Support journalism you trust. Support PBS News. Donate now, or even better, start a monthly contribution today.